The members on the phone will get started in just a couple minutes. All right, we're recording. Jamie, we're recording? All right, we're broadcasting and cameras on. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I'm now calling this special meeting of the Anchorage Assembly to order. Today is November 26, 2024. We're on the agenda today from 12, we're scheduled from 12:15 to 12:45. It's a tight timeline, but we can expand a little if we need. I will start by calling the roll. Madam Clerk.
Mark Littlefield.
Karen
Hold on,
Braga.
the clerk will call the roll. Yeah, special meeting. Are you muted, Mr. Myers?
I couldn't hear her. Did she call my name?
Yep.
Okay, I'm here.
George Martinez.
Present.
Mark Littlefield.
Here.
Felix Rivera.
Present.
Zach Johnson.
Here.
Chair Constant.
So the Assembly Council advises me that we do not have a quorum because we don't have sufficient members present in the room.
May I, Mr.
Do
Chair?
they have to be assembly members?
Yes.
So pursuant to code
Oh,
2.30.075 subsection B, the meeting shall be held with a quorum of members physically present except as expressly provided in subsection D. Subsection D is when the mayor, governor, or federal government has declared an emergency or for good cause by ruling of the chair, a quorum of assembly members may be established with the combined total of members physically or telephonically present. So unless
Is anyone on the phone near enough they can get into the Assembly Office 155 soon?
George.
We need one more. Mr. Presverdia notes he can be here in 10 minutes, so we will hold this meeting for 10 minutes. Thank you, everybody. Members present, don't go anywhere. So for the purposes of the record, we will call the meeting to order at 12:30.
Thanks, so.
everybody, thank you. We are now going to go on the record. Welcome, everybody. This is a special meeting of the Anchorage Assembly. Today is November 26, 2024. We're on the schedule from 12:15 to 12:45. With a hiccup, we are now convening at 12:34. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Assemblymember Myers,
Here.
Assemblymember Martinez,
Present.
Assemblymember Littlefield,
Here.
Assemblymember Rivera,
Present.
Assemblymember Johnson,
Here.
Chair Constant,
Here.
Vice Chair Zalatel. Here. Assemblymember Bronga,
Here.
Assemblymember Volland,
Happy to be here.
Assemblymember Sol,
Here.
Assemblymember Brawley,
Here.
Assemblymember Perez Verdia.
Here.
Chair Constant, you have a quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to ask for a motion to extend the meeting to 1:05 PM.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Ms. Zalatel, second by Ms. Brawley. I'd like to ask unanimous consent. Any objection to the motion? Hearing seen no objection, we have extended the meeting. Mr. Littlefield, would you please lead us in the pledge?
I will, Chair. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Bronco, would you please read the land acknowledgement?
Yes, Chair. A land acknowledgement is a formal statement recognizing the Indigenous people of a place. It is a public gesture of appreciation for past and present Indigenous stewardship of the lands that we now occupy. It is an actionable statement that marks our collective movement towards decolonization and equity. The Anchorage Assembly would like to acknowledge that we gather today on the traditional lands of the Dena'ina Athabascans. For thousands of years, the Dena'ina have been and continue to be the stewards of this land. It is with gratefulness and respect that we recognize the contributions, innovations, and contemporary perspectives of the Upper Cook Inlet Dena'ina.
Thank you, Ms. Bronco. So I have a couple of items to read that are laid on the table. One is AO 2024-110S, an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code Chapters 1.35, 3.20, and 3.30 relating to the organization of the executive branch, setting forth the duties and responsibilities of the executive branch agency is amending related Anchorage Municipal Code to reflect the new executive management structure and removing gendered language. It's supplemental to item 4A on the agenda. And I also have unnumbered AIM from the mayor update on non-congregate shelter, which is supplemental to item 4B on the agenda, AM 951-2024. Madam Clerk, do we need to vote to have them? No, okay. So then we'll just proceed. Next, we have before us item 4A. Item 4A is AO 2024-110, an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code, Chapters 1.35, 3.20, and 3.30 relating to the organization of the executive branch, setting forth the duties and responsibilities of executive branch agencies. We also have an S version. What's the will of the body?
Move to approve the S.
Second.
Motion to approve the S by Ms. Zalatel, seconded by Mr. Boland. Ms. Zalatel.
Thank you. The S version, as we discussed in the work session, includes the language on the Office of Equity and Inclusion that mirrors how we've set that office up, like the internal auditor between the branches, and then also includes language about the chief administrative officer being subject to confirmation. Thank you.
Right. Are there any amendments? Mr. Littlefield.
Thank you, Chair. I move Littlefield Amendment number 1.
Second.
Motion to amend by Mr. Littlefield, seconded by Ms. Brawley. Mr. Littlefield.
Thank you, Chair. In the org chart itself, the maintenance and operation calls out other service areas, which is the limited road service areas and the Subursa road service area. Also in the Parks and Rec Department, there is other service areas that are not affiliated with the Anchorage tax base. They have their own CIP, they have their own budget, they have their own operating budget. And I'd like to have that tab drop down below the Parks and Rec to point out that there is other service areas that are still underneath the Parks and Rec umbrella, but they are other service areas.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, just asking if the administration has an issue with this.
Mayor.
Thank you. The administration supports this amendment.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the matter? Hearing, seeing none. I'd like to ask unanimous consent. Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing and hearing no objection, the amendment is adopted. Next, we have the main motion before us as amended. Ms. Salato?
Thank you. I have a voice amendment I would like to make to the illustration of the org chart as amended that adds language at the top that says, "This illustration does not supersede specific code or charter provisions."
Second.
So a motion to amend by Ms. Zalatel, seconded by Ms. Brawley. Ms. Zalatel.
Thank you. This harkens back to the discussion at the work session, really about the role of the municipal attorney, which in charter suggests or says that that office represents the whole of the municipality. We've also had issues where the boxes on the illustration have been used to interpret code in a particular way. So this really says, hey, go back and read the code, look at the specific provisions for these jobs, where they sit, because they do sit in different chapters in code, or look at the charter. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, I'd like to ask unanimous consent. Any objection to the adoption of the amendment? Seeing and hearing no objection, the item is amended again. Now we have the main motion back before us as amended. Anyone wish to speak to the motion? So I'll just note that under AMC 230, there's also an org chart, and it represents the municipal assembly's org chart, and it has the Office of Equity and Justice in it, and 220, not 230 things. And so we don't believe that it's amendable at this time because 220 wasn't included in the title, but we do have a request into our team to draft an ordinance that will follow, that will bring it into alignment. So just so everybody's aware, at least for the time being, a couple weeks, a month, the org chart is a little bit weird if this is adopted. So Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, and just thought of one additional comment. Of course, we passed the budget on the 19th last week. Sorry, it took a while. It's been a long week. But just to note that this technically is also a component of the budget to the extent that some changes were made in that budget that needed to be effectuated by this. So so as I understand it, it's parallel to, I suppose, but really it's the last piece of the budget that we're finishing this year. And then I believe our task will be officially done. And of course, there's lots of work on the other end. But just to say, we're still finishing the budget within November, but this was that second part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to address the concern about the municipal assemblies org chart, and Section 8 of the ordinance contains language which authorizes the code revisor to change all other instances of Office of Equity and Justice to the Office of Equity and Inclusion as they appear throughout the Anchorage Municipal Code. So our read would be that if this were approved, the code revisor within the municipal attorney's office would have the authority to make that change without a separate ordinance.
Okay, I think that that's reasonable, although it's unusual to have the branches kind of working into each other's code sections, which I think is probably why it didn't get adopted. And so I think if there's no objection, then that would solve the problem of having to do further work. We've notated it here. So, okay, any objection? No, hearing no objection, that's fair. Thank you, Mr. Hurt. Okay, any further discussion on the motion? Hearing and seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Assemblymember Myers,
Yes.
Member Martinez,
Yes.
Member Littlefield,
Yes.
Member Rivera,
Yes.
Member Johnson,
Yes.
Member Constant,
Yes.
Member Zalato,
Yes.
Member Brongo,
Yes.
Member Vaughn,
Yes.
Member Brawley,
Yes.
Member Salt,
Yes.
Member Perez Rodilla.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes 12-0.
So on a vote of 12-0, AO 2024-110S as amended has passed the body. And that now brings us to Item 4B, which is AM 951-2024, recommendation of award of a contract to MASH Property Management LLC MASH for congregate shelter services. Ms. Alatel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Executive Director of the Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness, our agency is working in conjunction with the emergency cold weather shelter providers and the third-party oversight to implement or spin up the shelter as they come online. So we're directly involved with this action and would ask to be excused.
You're excused. It's found you have a substantial personal or financial interest in the matter. Next, though, we have this item before us. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Brawley, seconded by Mr. Rowland. Do you want to speak to it, Ms. Brawley?
I think I will turn it over to the administration because I am still reading it, but I have limited understanding what's in it. So I'll turn it to the mayor, Ms. Brown. Thanks.
All right.
Good afternoon. Farina Brown, Special Assistant to the Mayor, Homelessness and Health. I appreciate everyone being here this afternoon to review the contract for MASH to bring on additional 200 non-congregate shelter beds. Just for a bit of level set, we initially issued an intent to award to Henning for up to 400 beds in September of non-congregate shelter. At that time, there was significant discussion and from the assembly and the community regarding concerns with with Henning, and the need to diversify the number of non-congregate vendors. From that conversation, we were able to work with purchasing, and under the initial RFP, we had the opportunity to make multiple awards. MASH was the only other vendor that bid under the RFP, which gave us the ability to begin confidential negotiations for up to an additional 200 beds. Given the short timeline that MASH had to work with, they were able to bring to bear an additional 132 beds, which allows us to increase capacity as well as diversify the vendors that are bringing about non-congregate shelter beds. Right now, we have and are really pleased with the operations with our third-party vendor as well as Henning, and being able to address in those first 200 beds in partnership with the Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness, supporting individuals that are most vulnerable using our coordinated entry by name list. Going through that and working with our congregate shelter providers, we are remaining at capacity at both the 56th Avenue shelter, which has capacity for 200, as well as our non-congregate shelter, which also has capacity for 200. As we're all aware, the temperature is dropping, and with snow on the ground, it is critically important that we stand up the additional 200 beds. I do want to identify, given that we entered into negotiations with MASH after we started negotiate, after kind of we were in a position with a separate vendor, there was a lot of door knocking that they needed to do to stand up a location. As a result of that, there is a cost differential that you will see in the per bed cost. Henning is coming in at $98, where we have $125 for the per bed cost under MASH. What is important to note is that while there's an additional cost, we are not going to have the additional 200 beds. Bringing on the capacity is absolutely necessary that we're serving our most vulnerable. In addition to the existing staffing pattern, MASH is also going to bring on a social worker, recognizing that we are serving some of the most vulnerable in using our coordinated entry list, and that additional support will be much needed. I will pause there if there are any questions.
I do have folks in the queue. I don't know if their questions are relating to what you mentioned, but I have Mr. Rivera, Ms. Brawley, Mr. Volin. So Mr. Rivera.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So a couple of questions, and I'm going to ask folks in the room to please mute their mics. Thank you. So first question is around the 200 beds. Ms. Brown, I heard you repeatedly state that the need for 200 additional beds, and this award is obviously only for 132 additional beds. So first question is, does the administration plan on trying to fill that delta between 200 and 132? Or is the administration going to look at other strategies like warming centers to fill the delta. So I guess that's my first question. Are we going to get another award for more beds, or is this it for this winter? And then second question is around the pricing. I just want to try to get a better understanding here, because both Henning and MASH are working with Alex Hotel. And so Henning was able to get a deal with the Alex Hotel at roughly $98.20 per person per day. And MASH was only able to get a deal with the Alex Hotel at $125 per person per day. Is it the administration's understanding is that that's just market forces doing what they're doing because MASH came in late and they came in with a great need that the Alex added that additional charge? What is the difference here? Is the Alex Hotel frankly making some money off of winter shelter here, or are we actually getting some additional services from MASH? So those are my two questions. Thanks.
Through the chair, Member Rivera, thank you for the question. To address your first question, yes, we do recognize there's a delta between the 200 additional beds that we were looking for and the 132 beds that MASH will be able to bring online. We will be expanding capacity utilizing warming. The ITB for warming went live yesterday and will close on December 10th. We also have a RFGP that is going out that will also bring on rapid rehousing, because we understand while shelter is critically important right now, we also want to focus on movement in the system, ensuring that we don't have 300 plus people that are just decompressing out of shelter without somewhere to go. So we anticipate that the RFGPs will close in January, and we will see in February those initial rapid rehousing beds coming online. In the short term, it is the utilization of our warming to add additional capacity. With regard to your question regarding the price differential, yes, market costs are absolutely important to consider in this. The need to diversify was critically important, and understanding that, they were coming into this late and the need to negotiate is how we ended up at the 125. I do again want to reiterate that they are bringing on, in addition to the required staffing, a social worker that will add some additional capacity to what they're doing and expertise.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Browley.
Thanks. First, I'll say on the Alex, I know last season there was a different prioritization of individuals, but I think it was reported out that the Alex Hotel had the best kind of outcomes in terms of moving folks to housing. So I'm hopeful that will continue. Obviously, we've got one operator there. This is a different operator, but I have high expectations and hopes for that facility and for the folks living there. My question is thinking about the food contract, which I know is already serving the Alex, and the third party oversight contract, which I'm just skimming the report right now. Just curious if that will require any small increases in funds or service, if the contracts allow that, or if there needs to be another round of amendment to those contracts, because of course we want to make sure everybody gets fed. Thank you.
Through the chair, Member Brawley, the food contract will not need to be amended. It was set up for a max of 600 individuals for 3 meals per day, as well as third-party oversight included the expectation that there would be multiple vendors.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Rowland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So is the plan to bring a social worker on, is that part of the contract, or how is that being funded? I guess is my question.
Through the chair, Member Volin, thank you for the question. It is not a part of the contract. That is an in addition staffing that MASH is bringing online. And that would factor into their per person per bed rate. And I'm sorry for changing between bed and person, in their per bed rate.
Okay, so I guess that's interesting. I mean, what assurance do we have from the contractor that they're going to do that if it's being factored into this rate?
through the chair, Member Volin, the assurances is that it would be built into the contract. So even though it is not it is not a component of the required staffing, it would be included in the final contract as it was proposed during confidential negotiations.
Okay, which is this funding. So it will be part of the contract.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Salt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess I'm a bit disappointed in this outcome. And Ms. Brown, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think when this originally came before the assembly, we were looking at $85 or $98 for, I think, up to 500 beds through a contractor. And then we decided, who was successful at the Alex last year, that's been pointed out. And we decided that we wanted to have 2 contractors to provide some variety. And if I'm reading this right, that decision, if we approve this, is going to cost us an additional $107,000 per month. Is that recollection fairly accurate?
That is correct.
Thank you. Yeah, unfortunately, I can't support that. Thank you.
Right. Ms. Bronco.
Thank you, Chair. I really appreciate having the heads up yesterday. I was literally gobstopped when I heard that this price differential. I thought that it went out to bid again, but it sounds like, we just decided we'll keep the bids that they had. And so I guess I don't understand. If we decided that we want to be fair and have another operator, it probably would have been in our best interest to say, but this is the price, and see if MASH wanted to continue on or stick with their bid. I just think of all the bids out there, speaking of food, where someone made a mistake on the bidding contract and he's out despite how many people he's been feeding all summer. And then we decide to split this up, and in my mind, we're really getting taken here. If we're counting this $27 a day is the social worker, that means there's a social worker getting paid $1,836 a day. They better be good. The other thing that bothers me is no one seems to be able to tell me who comes out of these hotel sheltering situations and resolves. I really would love to know a number. Are we housing the same people that we housed last winter? Are these new vulnerable people? If they're not moving through, I have a real hard problem with this. The other thing, and I'm sorry I blatted you lots of things yesterday, but I looked at 3812 Spenard Road is a beautiful office building, $2,275,000, and we would be investing in something that we would have to show for it. Econo Inn only has 42 rooms, so that's not going to be real helpful. Probably 84 people could be housed in it, but it's for sale. I would much rather purchase a building that we could use for this purpose rather than be put in this situation again, where we're kind of getting gouged, in my opinion. So I guess those weren't questions. I'm sorry.
I have you in the queue. If you want to respond to that, that's fine. The administration is definitely able to respond.
Well, I would like to respond, and thank you, Member Bronga, for raising those points. And I just, want to stress to the body that, significant concerns were raised with Henning and the risk of having just one vendor. And so that is why we're here. We need the beds. We need to diversify vendors. And as has been pointed out, we'll be standing up warming and housing or focusing on that piece from here. To your point about data and who's moving through, that is one area that, we're looking at ways in which we can provide and identify, what data points to, and maybe Ms. Brown can speak more specifically to that. But the bottom line is we need these beds. And, we went back per the discussion with the body about the concerns with Henning. And this is the proposal that we have before us. So I do ask for the body's support. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Oh, I actually think the mayor spoke to exactly what I was going to ask. So I think she answered my questions. I just, I agree we need the beds now. I realize that this isn't what we had hoped for in terms of price, but I just want to encourage my colleagues to support this proposal. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, thanks. A couple comments. First, I do agree that long-term, we should be looking at adding more units and utilizing our funding that way. I think this is the challenge we've had for the last few years, which is it's not sustainable to keep paying for operations at this level without more revenue or just a significant different set of priorities. I think you all know that. I shared that with Katie yesterday, and I appreciate the meeting as well. So I think that should be the goal, including for money that we pull in on an operating basis. But for the benefit of my colleagues, this discussion about cost made me think of something that we prepared actually earlier this year for the legislature, making the argument that they should invest in shelter, knowing again that it's not a forever cost, but it's a need right now. So I'm just going to very briefly read. These are all numbers from last year. So looking at shelter, at that time, the CWS was 133 costs per bed per day. So that, that's a congregate shelter. I don't know what it is exactly now, but just to note, that's what it was back in April or March. A police patrol, so sending out 2 officers, is $184 per hour. EMS service for fire ambulance, that's a staff of 5, that's $345 per hour. Anchorage Safety Patrol response team, $171 per hour. And emergency visits at the Medicaid rate, emergency department visit is $366 per visit. An inpatient bed is $725 per day. And of course, that's not including all of the other services they might need. So I mention those numbers because I'm not saying that. So there's a Venn diagram of public safety and homelessness, and but what we're talking about is when there is an emergency response, these are the folks we send out, and they are very expensive. And we already have an issue of not having enough staff to respond to all of the needs in the city. So to the extent that we are paying maybe more than people want to have somebody have a safe place and the ability to maybe move into housing, maybe better their lives, whatever it is, this is a cost savings for the municipality. So we pay here or we pay there. So I bring those up just to say, I wish we were in a better place than we are now, but I think these are really necessary, and we need to be okay with these costs when we understand what the cost of not doing this is. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
I would like to ask unanimous consent. We extend this meeting by 10 minutes. Is there any objection? Mayor, no objections. We'll be extended to 1:15. Mr. Volland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to support this for a couple different reasons. Number one is just kind of where we are in time right now. Anna spoke to some comparative costs, but there's also a potential cost to human life that we need to keep sort of front of mind right now. In terms of the needed work to continue to fund shelter, to Ms. Branga's point, the Assembly has worked to do hundreds of units of hotel conversions to housing, right? But even those locations still need operators. And in fact, MASH, the contractor who's being considered here, operates some of those locations currently that we funded through the Alaska, what is AAHLT, Alaska Affordable Housing and Land Trust, Anchorage Affordable, yeah, you know what I'm saying. So anyway, I think they've got a lot of experience doing this type of work, which I greatly appreciate. And I also think that it is important to sort of diversify the vendors. I think when you look at sort of anything in our economy, I think whether it's, private market or even nonprofits, level of service, I think, is always enhanced when there's a competitive element at play. And I think right now that the reality is that we have limited vendors who are able to do this work. In the future, I would like to see growth, and more groups be able to do this stuff as we bring on those necessary units in the future. We're going to be needing more people to be able to step up and help us out, because certainly I don't think the municipality is ever going to be in a position where we are able to do all of the operations of this kind of thing. So with all that being said, I appreciate another entity being willing to step up and do this, and hopefully in the future there will be more of them to do so, and I will support this. I urge my colleagues to support it as well. Thank you.
Mr. Rivera.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just so that it's all stated on the record, the contract that we approved on October 8th of this year with Catholic Social Services to run the CWS shelter, their per person per day rate is $89.69. So it seems like we have quite a variety of different rates. And I just do want to gently push back against, not against, but push back on some of the things that both Member Brawley and Member Volan stated. While I will be supporting this, I do think we need to be critical of the total dollar amounts that folks are coming to us with. Partly because we should set expectations as a municipality that if you are going to be charging an additional $25 per person, that the results should mirror that increase. And I'm not entirely certain the results will mirror that increase between the two contractors. Now, I don't blame MASH at all for the increase. I blame the market forces and a particular entity that is making money off of emergency cold weather shelter. That said, hopefully in the future, we can do a little bit more pre-planning so that we don't have to rake out $125 per person per bed for non-congregate shelter, that it's a little bit more even, which is like that $100 range, plus or minus a few dollars, is what I would hope. So I will be supporting this, but I think we should next year look at having reduced costs for shelter. Thank you.
Mr. Martinez.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be supporting this, and I encourage my colleagues to support this, but I wanted to speak to just a couple of elements. First, my hope would be that we get to more positive outcomes for unhoused folks so that we don't have to grow the sector and don't have to expand the pool of operators. I don't want this to be a growth industry in Anchorage. I want us to be able to get to resolutions, and fundamentally, this administration's in a situation where they've inherited, they've advanced, and our body was critical about one vendor holding the keys to all of the doors. And so in the business world, there are increased costs fundamentally with diversification. If that diversification is not built on a competitive strategy of the bid down, the lowest cost bidder, then you potentially will pay a little more to make sure you're not locking all of your chips up in one particular category. I respect that and recognize that. But I also would like, to Mr. Volan's point, if there is a competitive nature, then a real clear understanding that we would never enter into a singular contract in the first place. This is a repair of an initial step that, if competition is truly in the environment at the call to contract and the RFP calls, we would see a potential cost savings to this cost today. But at diversification today, seems like there will be a little more cost. That cost hopefully is a preventative cost for us folks not coming back during the term of the contract, having controlled all of the doors, and then really putting us in a different position. So I think this was a preventative thing with respect to diversification. I don't want us to grow. I want better outcomes, and having more people get out of this particular part of the continuum and the system is to our advantage. But I'll be supporting this today because we are where we are, and I applaud the administration for trying to make some lemonade out of these lemons. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Littlefield.
Thank you. Just a quick question. We're going with the number 2 vendor for 132 beds. Have we looked at whether the number 1 vendor can supply the 200 beds right now at the 9820 rate? And I might have a follow-up question.
Thank you, Member Littlefield. We do not know that. But again, we're here because of the direction to diversify our vendors for these services. Thank you.
All right, Mayor LaFrance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the members for this discussion today. I want to emphasize what has been stated, that we are here with this contract in front of us because this is where we are in time right now with the issue concerning homelessness and the need for shelter in our community. I want to also emphasize that we, as the administration, are determined to get to a different place a year from now and are committed and focused on housing. So again, thank you for your attention and conversation today, and I would be grateful for your support of this item. Thank you.
I have myself in the queue. I'll just add that I believe we are actually here because of the previous administration's inactions and actions. Those actions by the individuals who are in charge of the system set themselves up for a really nice landing outside of government, in which the checks are now accruing directly to them and their organization. I believe that the mess that we were in then will not be resolved this year because, as others have stated, we are where we are and we have to deal with this problem. Recognizing we had a transition who walked in to empty bags and empty promises and empty promises. They're doing a good job of trying to get their feet under them and tackle these issues. You start with the fires that are burning before you start tackling the structural problems. And so this is one of the fires that's burning. I look forward to the stain of the previous administration washing away with the flow of water and the tide that we're going to see, even though their hands are still on the receipt of these dollars, at least through the end of this year. To that end, I would ask the administration look closely for next year at a firm fixed price contract process where we put out a price and say, this is the price, because of course, vendors are going to find what's available and they're going to push to what's profitable so that they can ensure that their operations are solid or even can pay bonuses. I don't know. I'm not inside their books. But this will continue to increase if we don't take the handle. And on the other side of that, we need to secure the housing units ourselves. I don't believe we can be in a position where we're seeking these folks to go out and have another vendor underneath them because we have no real insight into how those costs are shared or accrued. And so those are the two things I ask for next year is let's look at a firm fixed price and secure the facilities ourselves, and of course, continue to work for the housing. And with that, we are running out of time. I'd ask members to proceed to vote. Madam Clerk.
Member Martinez,
Yes.
Member Littlefield,
No.
Member Rivera,
Yes.
Member Johnson,
Yes.
Member Constant,
Yes.
Member Bronga,
No.
Member Volland,
Yes.
Member Brawley,
Yes.
Member Salt,
No.
Member Perez Verdilla,
Yes.
Member Myers.
No.
The motion passes 7-4.
On a vote of 7-4, AM 951-2024 has passed the body. We have just 2 minutes. Is there anyone from the audience who wishes to participate? Hearing seen none. Any member wish to add comments before we adjourn? Seeing hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.